You know what it is. That's right. It's time to talk money with your money nerd and financial coach. Now, tighten those purse strings and open those ears. It's the Money Talk with Tiff podcast.
Hey, and welcome to another episode of Tiffany's Take Right Answer Your Questions right here on the podcast. If you would like your questions answered, go to www.moneytalkwitht.com/ask Tiffany, and I'll be more than happy to answer for you. So for this episode, last week I did like a whole life updates episode. If you didn't listen to it, go back and listen. I'll make sure I have the link in the show notes. But I went over just some changes that have happened in my life. And as a result, I had one of my listeners reach out and ask me to dive a little deeper into the health versus wealth, how health is wealth, and, all of the things that I've discovered since living abroad and the food and all that stuff. So that's what I'm going to get into today, is just to dive a little bit deeper into that topic. So in case you didn't listen, like I said, go back and listen. But just to give you a brief overview, I moved out of the country to Jamaica over the summer. And part of the reason was because my health. And when I was in the US, the last part of last year, beginning of this year, I was having a mysterious illness where my blood pressure was out of whack. I was swelling really bad. I was hospitalized a couple of times. They couldn't figure out what was going on. I was seeing heart doctors and kidney doctors and all types of stuff. And all of my blood work was coming back okay, but they couldn't figure out what was going on. So they put me on blood pressure medication. Okay. So now let's fast forward. I went to Jamaica the first time this year back in February. And when I went, I didn't take any of the blood pressure medication. I was like, to be honest, I just forgot the first few days. And then by then I was like, well, shoot, I'm not having any issues. Let's just see what happens. Well, I didn't take it the whole time I was down there. So maybe about 2 or 3 weeks or so. So almost a month. When I went back to the States, I told the doctor, when I went for a checkup, they checked my blood pressure and they said everything was normal and the medication must be working. And I laughed and they were like, what's so funny? I was like, well, I haven't taken the medication in at least a month and some change now. And so they were shocked. They were like, really? Like, your blood pressure is looking really good. What have you been doing? And I said, well, I was just out of the country and I was just eating like the locals eat. And, that's pretty much it. And, getting a little more exercise because, sometimes you have to walk or what have you. But that was it. And so they were like, well, whatever you're doing, keep it up. So that made me realize that there's a few things going on in the US that don't happen in other places. And another thing that opened my eyes. So I went for the first time in February. I went back again in like April-ish, March, and then I went back again in May. And May is when I actually made the move. Now, all of those times that I went back, every time I came back to the US, the food tasted weird. It just tasted a little off to me. And when I realized that, I'm like, well, dang, the food might be what's killing us here in the US. From May to July, I was in between Jamaica and Africa. Okay. Now, I love Africa and I love Jamaica. The food is unmatched. But mind you, being out of the US for 2 whole months, right? That really woke up my taste buds when it comes to what food is supposed to taste like. Because mind you, in these other countries, they don't have a ton of processed food. Like for instance, here in Jamaica, a lot of the processed food that's here is here because it gets imported in. It's not that they really make it here, if you get what I'm saying. So, it might be Americans sending barrels or, to their loved ones, and that's how they're getting processed food. Or it may be the grocery stores importing the foods just to tailor to the tourists and things like that. That is how processed food gets here. And with the Jamaican culture, they're used to going out to the ocean, catching fish, going to their yards, and there's plenty of fruit trees, vegetables, things like that, and cooking with whatever they have. And the same thing with Africa. Okay. So that's what my taste buds had gotten accustomed to. Now, when I went back to the States in July, so mind you, I've been gone for 2 months. Every single thing I tasted from the time I stepped foot in the airport, I smelled pizza and I said, oh my gosh, it's pizza. Like I haven't had pizza in a few months, let me get some pizza. Well, I got the pizza and y'all, I couldn't even finish it. It was so salty and it tasted horrible. And I just know had my taste buds not adjusted, I would have tore that pizza up. It would have been the best thing, since sliced bread. But now that my taste buds have adjusted, things just do not taste the same. I shipped a barrel down here with a whole bunch of food stuff and things before I left in May. Well, I just got it after I came back towards the end of July, early August. And when I tasted, for instance, the Vienna sausages that I had in there, the Vienna sausages from the US are way more salty than the Vienna sausages here in Jamaica, because they have their own version as well. The ones from the US are extremely salty. I could barely finish the whole can. That just goes to show you that things in the US are completely different than other things in other countries. Either things were too salty or extremely sweet. Those were like the two extremes that I was experiencing while I was there. Honestly, just look at the fundamental truth. Health and wealth are very deeply connected. So consider this, right? Financially secure individuals often have better access to healthcare, nutritious foods, and healthy lifestyle options, while those with limited resources may find themselves trapped in cycles of poor health and financial strain. Now, I have learned that this is mostly true in the US, right? Because here in Jamaica, there's food everywhere. Now, granted, not everybody has, the means to always get food, but there are trees everywhere, fruit trees everywhere. There are vegetables everywhere. Like I just learned the other day that across the street from my house, there's this field. It's just a field that nobody keeps up or anything. Pumpkin grows in there. And so one of my neighbors said they'll bring me a pumpkin, right? But that's my point. Like there's so much fresh food all around. And it's not like that in America. Also, there's not many fast food places here, right? So in Jamaica, don't get me wrong, there are fast food places, like there is a KFC, there is a Little Caesars, there's a Burger King, like there's all types of stuff here, but it's not as prevalent as in America. What is more prevalent are the little stands where people are selling just fresh food that they're cooking right there on the spot. And that's one thing that I love about Jamaica is you can always find food somewhere. And in the mornings, they usually are cooking porridge on the street, at the stands you could stop by. That's their version of fast food. You can get porridge in the morning. You can get soup in the afternoon. You can get jerk chicken at night. It's like there's always someone outside selling, probably out of necessity. But let me tell you, the food is so much better than a McDonald's, a Chick-fil-A, a Burger King, whatever else you can find, right? So that's also what I love here. And the people are so nice. Like I went up to my neighbor's house the other day just to stop by and say, hey, and she fed me. She gave me some green juice that she made with some spinach from her garden and all type. Like it's just a way healthier way of life. And for me, that is irreplaceable. Like I would rather have the simple living, like washing clothes by hand, walking to the store when I need to, going out to my fruit trees. I got an ackee tree, so picking ackee, or, when I had the mango tree before the hurricane, picking mango. Like that is more living than I was getting in the US. And so for me, I'm like, even though I might not be the richest person, I feel very wealthy. I feel very wealthy because not only is my health doing better, my kids are feeling better, just the environment change. I also noticed that in America, when I went back, that it's just a very stressful environment. I had went out with one of my friends, and even while we were out, there were so many stressors that was happening. Like, for instance, here in Jamaica, guns aren't really that prevalent. Like, you have to jump through a lot of hoops to have a gun. And so, unless you have it illegally, but most people don't have guns. In the US, most people do have guns. And so, even like when people have disagreements here, for instance, me with my American mindset, I'm looking like, oh, where can I duck if somebody starts shooting or something pop off? Like, where can I go? Meanwhile, they just threw a couple fists and then everybody was back drinking and having fun and partying. You know what I'm saying? So it's a very different environment when it comes to stressors as well. When I was back in the US, there was a shooting, at the place. Luckily, I wasn't there, but there was a shooting at one of the places that my friends had went to. And so that just causes you to have a whole other level of environmental stress as well. So not only are you killing your body from the inside out, but you're also killing your body from the outside in, if that makes sense. So there's just so many like takeaways that I've had. And also, even going to Africa, that was eye-opening because they live even more simple than here in Jamaica. But the thing is, the people are so happy. Like it made me realize that you don't have to have much to live a happy, fulfilled, long life. I have a neighbor here in Jamaica. He's like 60 something and he does back flips and front flips, climbs trees, all types of stuff. Like, he is not slowing down. And that is the norm here. Meanwhile, in America, everybody, as you start getting older, your body starts breaking down, your knees start hurting, all of these different things. And that's not the majority of cases here from what I've seen so far. And even when I was moving here, a couple of weeks before I moved here, one of my friend's coworkers had passed away, 32-year-old, and it was a heart attack. I'm 33. And when I told one of my friends who's 33 here, I said, one of my friend's friends had passed away from a heart attack that was our age. They're like, that doesn't happen here. Like, usually if young people are passing away, it's because of an accident or, something like that. It's not because of health reasons. And that was another thing that was eye-opening to me. Like, what we consider normal there is not normal elsewhere. So there's just so many things to unpack with this. And even advertising, down to advertising. Here in Jamaica, there isn't much, people don't really watch TV or, things like that. They do have social media and stuff, but, it's not as prevalent as the advertising there. And so if you think about the last time you saw a commercial for a juicy burger or some crispy fries, the ads that you're looking at are designed to make you crave those foods. So regardless of their nutritional value, you're like, ooh, I want to go get that burger. That look good. It's just a powerful influence on our consumer choices. But also realize it's not just advertising. The government policies also shape our food systems. So there's a lot of subsidies that are geared toward corn and soy, and that's made processed foods cheaper, while fruits and vegetables remain more expensive in the US. Here, it's the opposite. The processed foods are more expensive, while the fruits and veggies, generally speaking, are a little more. So it's just a lot to think about. And I could go on and on. I don't want this episode to be forever, but that's one of the reasons why I decided to make the move, is because you just realize that things are very different in the US once you start traveling outside the US. And since, running the podcast and running the blog and, all the things that I do for my business, I can do from anywhere. I'm like, why not be in a place that I can get the best outcomes, not only for myself, but for my kids as well? It just made more sense to me. So hopefully, listener who requested this, this was really helpful. And even the people that didn't request this, hopefully you thought this was helpful too. Now, I know not everybody can move. I definitely understand that. But what are some things to do that you can kind of circumvent the system a little bit? Now, don't get me wrong. I have friends that are extremely healthy in the US. They don't eat, processed food. They don't eat fast food. They cook at home all the time. They shop at the best grocery stores and things like that. So, of course, you can do all of that. But if you can't, just make sure that whatever you're putting in your system is going to be good for your system and work towards longevity. So even though that burger might sound good for now, and it might be good for now, think about what it may be doing to your system later on down the road. And this is coming from someone that before I left the US, I was eating fast food at least a few times a week, to be honest with you, at least a few times a week. I have lost over 20 pounds since I've been out of the US. So since February, I've lost over 20 pounds. And it's not that I'm not eating, I'm eating. And I'm eating great, matter of fact. It's just that the type of stuff that I'm eating has changed. And I'm also, a little more active here as well. So anywho, hopefully that helps. Hopefully that answered your question, listener. And like I said, if you have any questions about money, business, career, or even just these like little life updates and things that I'm giving you, please go to www.moneytalkwitht.com/Ask Tiffany, and I'll be more than happy to answer. Be sure you rate, review, subscribe, all those good things for the podcast so that way other people can find us, especially reviews. I would love if you leave a review because I know there's so many people listening, but I only have 40 reviews. So especially if you're on Apple Podcasts, please write me a quick review. If it's good, bad, indifferent, whatever, I read all of them and I take everything to heart. So definitely let me know what you're thinking. How can I help you? What you like about the podcast, whatever the case may be. So until next week, thank you so much for listening. And I hope you have a wonderful rest of your week. Bye.
Thank you for listening, joining, and being a part of the Money Talk with Tiff podcast this week. You can check Tiff out every Thursday for a new Money Talk podcast. But if you just can't wait until next week, you can listen to previous podcast episodes at moneytalkwitht.com or follow Tiff on all social media platforms at Money Talk with T. Until next time, spend wise by spending less than you make. A word to the money wise is always sufficient.